Welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider, and it's my privilege to bring you tonight Dr. Pat Gemma. Pat is the superintendent for the Truckee-Tahoe Unified School District. Pat, welcome to the show.
Hi, Maya, thanks.
It's great to have you here. Pat, we want to find out something about you, who you are and where you came from. So let's hop in the Wayback Machine and go back to where you were born. Where do you hail from originally?
That's a kind of an interesting story in that I was actually born in Northern California in Santa Rosa, but went down south, so to speak, and was raised in Southern California. My father was the head of broadcasting for CBS on the West Coast, and he got involved in television at the early days of TV. So he
sort of like how we are here at TTC TV.
Well, right, although I'm sure this is advanced to what he began with. So I was raised in Southern California and came north in the late 60s to attend college. St. Mary's College offered me a small scholarship, and it was a nice opportunity for me to leave the Southern California area and head up north, and actually I've been here ever since. My family is a large one, 7 kids. I've got 4 brothers and 2 sisters. Many of my siblings are in the education business. I have a brother that's a principal of a large high school over in the El Dorado Hills, another brother that's principal of a huge high school down in Tucson. My youngest sister is a nun, and she's now out of the education piece. She's a psychologist and working in the inner cities in Chicago. And
wow.
I have another sister who's in the media business, and my oldest brother is in accounting. And,
so your family
they're
sort of covers
all
the
over,
gamut.
yeah, and we're all over the place.
Did you know that you wanted to be in education when you went to college? Was that something that was a goal?
No, I don't think so. I think I was like many youth of that age. You know, you go to college because it's kind of the thing to do after high school, although might find this interesting in that right after high school I went into the seminary for a year. I thought I wanted to be a priest, and that didn't happen, and then the St. Mary's College thing went on, and I graduated from St. Mary's with a major in English and in psychology, and I thought I wanted to be a child psychologist for some reason, and after the military thing and whatnot, I started graduate school and decided that I didn't want to get involved with research. I wanted to work with kids. Got involved in teaching. Early days of teaching were at the elementary level and in special ed. Later on, I became interested in the connection between learning disabilities and delinquency. And so I worked in the court schools in the East Bay area. Very soon on, got involved in school administration, was a middle school VP, and as a young, 25-year-old VP,
upstart.
enjoyed doing all of the things, with kids like ski trips and student council and those types of things. But always during the summer and in the evenings, keeping my interest again with the court schools and the delinquent youth, especially those again with learning disabilities. Became one of the first resource specialists in Contra Costa County during the infancy of what they call the Master Plan for Special Education. Again, got involved in administration early on. Was a middle school principal in Martinez for 5 years. The superintendent at that time moved me to the high school in that same district. That high school had 6 principals in 7 years.
Uh-oh, was that a signal he was trying to get rid of you?
Yeah, I think the commercial on Let's Have Mikey Taste It was invented on that one. But stayed at the high school for 10 years. We rebuilt the school.
Good for you.
Probably some of my fondest memories will always be with that staff and those students and those families in Martinez.
Sounds like that must have been a success story.
Oh, it was tremendous success. It's just it's a wonderful school to this day, and I had the wonderful honor of being the high school principal for both of my daughters. I'm not sure they enjoyed that.
I was going to say, that's not fair. I would have protested loudly.
But so we worked through that, and that was fun. I left Martinez as the high school principal after 10 years and went to Piedmont, and I was the assistant superintendent for curriculum and personnel in Piedmont. And I did that for about 4 years, and then I've been up here ever since. This is my 5th year as the superintendent of the Tahoe Truckee District. And it's just been, you know, if you take the philosophy of it's meant to be.
Yes.
Well, boy, this job was meant to be in terms of a perfect match for my interest, experience, skills, and the type of wonderful people that I've encountered being here in this district and in this community.
What were you expecting when you moved up here, and what maybe was different when you got here?
Well, after the interview process, what I was expecting was the need to build trust, especially to build trust around issues dealing with the finances of the district. And I learned that through the interview process. Shortly after I arrived, activity, let's call it, that I did at each school with the faculties, with the administration, and with parent groups, and I did it also with some of the service clubs, is I went into the schools and I asked one question that had 4 parts, and then I collected the data on that. And that was, if you consider this school and its educational offerings, in order for it to improve, what would have to, and here's the 4 parts, stop from happening, start happening because it's not, continue unchanged, and continue but modified, and talk about you know, how it would be modified. And I collected a wealth of information in about the first 90 days that I was here that I still have in a file, and I go back to that from time to time and reassess and look at what I call the SITNAs, the situations in need of attention for the district.
The fires.
It's kind of a low budget way of doing an extensive strategic plan.
But still, you must have seen some patterns in the responses that you
Absolutely, and they corresponded a lot, I think, with the direction I received from the board who hired me. And again, the issue of building trust was certainly high on the plate.
So what are some of the things that you really enjoy about being the superintendent up here?
Well, I certainly enjoy the community support for the schools. Even in Piedmont, that has the highest parcel tax in the state, the community support for schools here in this district is just inspiring. The interest in kids and the interest in youth and the interest in their wholesome upbringing is yeah, inspiring is the only word that comes to mind. I really, it resonates for me.
I'm sure it must, given your background and your interest. That's indicative, or that's sort of something we see across the board in Truckee, and that's one of the things that we've talked about a million times on this program, is how Truckee is so very special and so very different from a lot of other communities, because people care and they put the time in and they volunteer for things. And kids, certainly, you see that. What are some of the challenges, then, of being the superintendent up here?
I've said this to my compadres down in the Bay many times. It's very expensive to run education up in the mountains.
Don't really appreciate
snow removal and transportation, which is an absolute necessity. You know, in an inner city school, you can decide to not have home-to-school transportation, but up in Tahoe Truckee, it's a must, and so you have to suffer the encroachment on that. And we receive about the same amount of money per child as they do in, let's call it, the flatland.
Really?
Yeah, but it costs quite a bit more to operate things up here.
So the state doesn't backfill any of that extra cost of being at 6,000 feet?
There is some consideration, but the encroachment on the general fund this past year for home-to-school transportation alone was $1 million.
Ouch.
So in a school district that doesn't have transportation, that $1 million would go into the educational program.
Right.
But, so that's certainly one of the challenges. The other challenge is the geography and the how big the district is. Somebody told me one time this is the 5th largest district in the state geographically. I don't know if that's true. That's something I was told. And so, for example, to call a quick board meeting, you know, some board members have to, some board members, you know, have to drive 40 minutes. And if it's during the construction season, you know, it can be a lot longer than that. Getting the principals together. Also, the district functions in many ways like it's two districts. The needs and interests at the lake, let's say, are oftentimes significantly different than the needs and interests up here in Truckee. And the law allowed us in 1999, when we passed our first bond measures to rebuild the schools, to bifurcate the district into two facility districts. That was the first time that that was allowed. And the advantage in that was that the people who were voting on the bonds down at the lake knew that they were voting on the needs specific to them, whereas up in Truckee, same. And so that turned out to be an advantage. But getting back to the initial question, that's a real challenge in this district, the geography. If I have a meeting down at the lake at 8 in the morning, and know that I have another one at 3 in the afternoon, I have to think about what I'm going to do so that I avoid the half hour down, half hour back, half hour down, half hour back thing again. So it's just scheduling is a bit more tricky.
Do you miss being involved directly with the kids?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I do. As the further up you go, I say, the further down you go sometimes. But I do have the opportunity of interacting with kids at least twice a month, because I'm forcing myself now to be at a site every other Wednesday for about half the day. And I do make sure that after a board meeting night, the next day I'm in a classroom.
Just great way to decompress.
It is, and it's a way to remind me of why we're all really here. I mean, sometimes out of necessity, certainly we have to get involved with the business of education, the business and the finances and the legalities and so on. But watching our teachers work with our students is a real highlight for me. And I did have the opportunity last year, Lori Martin, who does many things for our district, and Sasha Newman from this high school organized a group of students to attend the National Conference on Service Learning up in Seattle, and they invited me along. So I got to room with one of the high school students here and participate with the other students in this wonderful conference. And so things like that keep me in touch.
Back
yeah,
in.
absolutely.
Yeah, keep your shirt sleeves rolled up. We're in the middle of an election cycle, as you know. We're less than a week away from our local elections. Yeah.
Can't wait. Let's get it over.
Exactly. Woo! Is it Tuesday yet? Moving away from the local issues, what are some of the issues you see on a state level that people might want to be paying attention to, or what are some of your concerns at the state level?
You can't avoid the concern. The state's economy is in terrible shape. Some say the worst shape it's been in since after World War II. Schools in California are funded by the state. So as the state economy goes, so goes the local school district's budget in general. This district, that problem of budget is exacerbated by the fact that we've been in enrollment decline. Shouldn't say it this way, but ever since I arrived.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, right. So this is the 5th year of enrollment decline at about somewhere between 80 to 200 students per year.
For the whole district?
Yes.
That's a significant number.
Oh, it's huge. And what that means is that the increased money that our school district receives, like all, from this thing called the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, that you subtract out of that new money the money you lose from the loss in enrollment.
Right.
And for this year, as an example, 2002, 2003, we have less money to spend this year than we did last year, even with the 2% COLA.
But relative to the drop in student enrollment, your costs haven't come down.
Right. An example there is if you lose 100 students, you lose about $500,000 in revenue. But what do you lose in cost? Let's say those 100 students came in 4 neat packages of 25 fourth graders, 25. You might be able to not hire back 4 teachers, on an average of $50,000 or $60,000 per teacher for costs and benefits at all. Maybe you're losing in cost $250,000. Right. So you have to cut from the rest of the program to make up the difference. To be in declining enrollment is very difficult for a school district, and we are facing significant challenges we're not calling them budget cuts anymore, we're calling them reallocations of funds in the near future. But I will say this, especially this year, to the credit of the employees and the unions in our district, they're working with us to make decisions on reallocations. Sometimes I've experienced in other districts that I've worked where the notion is we don't care, just find the money, and we don't want to hear the truth, so to speak. But a quality group of folks here, and we know we've got difficult times, but we'll survive, we'll work through them. One thing I'm very proud of, Maya, is that this district's financial recovery from the 1995 through 1998 era has been excellent, and we were able to gain a financial package or a financial portfolio that allowed us to be AAA rated when we went out and sold our bonds, so it saved the taxpayers millions of dollars over the years of those bonds. And also, we finally, with last year's negotiation, have all of our employee groups up to about the median of the 8 districts that we compare with. And the board worked very hard on that and had to make some courageous decisions to get to that point. And they have more courageous decisions to face in the near future. You
mentioned the declining enrollment. I grew up in the public school system in San Francisco, and pre-Prop 13, where we had books and programs and curriculum and plenty of teachers, and I grew up in what I think must be a very different environment then than now. I'm just going to throw a stab out here at a really large question for you. How do schools address those deficiencies climbing out of this hole of budget crises annually and address curriculum for the kids and really keep their eye on that ball? It's a $64,000 question.
The districts that do it effectively, and I think this is one of those districts, do it by a union of all the players, by a teammanship. Teachers probably are first on that list in terms of picking up the ball and doing over and above kinds of things. I'm thinking, for example, of North Tahoe High School, for example. What those teachers do to customize schedules for kids who have needs to go to UC and ski on a high-powered ski team or to participate in a very top-quality music or instrumental music program, and how those teachers pick them up as independent studies during their prep time and so on and so forth. It's through efforts like those, joined certainly again by a community that passes a parcel tax every 4 years that generates an additional $2.6 million a year that's spent just on program. It's only through those vehicles that it gets accomplished.
And then, of course, just a couple of weeks ago, we had Sandra Carter-Packard on the show.
Oh, did you?
Excellence in Education.
I missed that, Sandra, sorry.
But the Excellence in Education is a very important partner for
yes.
us. Yeah.
Right. One of the most prolific ed foundations in the state.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Linda Brown and the group. I mean, what a fabulous thing.
Stellar group of folks. And the other thing that I'm inspired by is the parents that get involved with fundraisers or Excellence in Ed. We now have Measure J on the bond down at the lake to rebuild the high school, middle school down at the lake. Those parents that are involved for much more than just their child. Right. They're involved for all the kids in the community, and that too is inspiring, and it's that kind of an approach that helps you dig out of the hole in these tough financial times.
It's interesting to me the way that people can connect with kids in this community even when they don't have their own. And I'll use myself again as an example. I go to the Wolverines games. I have every year since I've moved here. I go to the high school plays. There's another one coming up really soon. And not only are those great events to go to just because they're a ton of fun and they're so well done, but it helps you stay connected. And I notice a lot of people in the community doing that. I think they want to stay connected with the kids. They want to know what they're doing. They want to know how they're doing. And this is one way to do that. And I'm not sure, okay, this has to go on in other communities, but I have a sense of pride that it goes on so clearly in our community.
And I think that's well-directed pride. I mean, I think I've been blessed in working in great educational organizations, school districts. There's no doubt in my mind this is on the top of the list. And I know that's what you're kind of supposed to say as a superintendent, but it really is true. The attitudes of people towards improving the quality of life in meaningful ways. Character education. Mel Cohn, our board president right now, I mean, he talks to the board about it every board meeting, the importance of character education, and that is certainly part of the spirit and the culture, you know, in this greater community. Yep. That doesn't mean that we're perfect, and it doesn't mean that there isn't a great place to go and improve. And to that end, I would say that one of the things that I'm also very proud of and want to see more of is bringing top-level, high-quality staff development to the teachers in our district. We last year won the largest grant for a district our size to be received in the state of California ever, $750,000 grant from the Eisenhower Foundation to run over 3 summers a institute for teachers to learn how to teach literacy through science. And so it's a partnership between our school district, of course, the Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, and UC Berkeley. Dr. Rick McCallum, the director of the ARLET, it's a Masters of Reading program at UC Berkeley. You know, I mean, it's...
it sounds like a great opportunity.
Oh, it's great. And, you know, we're going to train over 50 teachers per summer for 3 summers. The teachers, not only do they get that top quality staff development, but they're also, their time that they commit is considered, and that they get a small stipend for participating during the 2 weeks. And so that's wonderful.
Well, and you get a greater quality educator on the other side of that, too.
Right. Additional to that, and certainly much more of a wholehearted commitment on the part of the 15 to 20 teachers that took part. We just completed the first cadre. I think it was 15 teachers that completed the ARLET program up here over 2 years. 8 intensive weeks, 2 summers, and then Friday nights and Saturdays.
That's a big commitment.
Big commitment. But UC Berkeley did that, and the teachers, you know, paid a fraction of the cost of the units if they had traveled down to the Bay Area and so on. So I'm really excited about that. The other piece that I'd like to see, and
you got to make it quick.
I'm talking to the administrators about, is how we raise expectations for our youth. You know, it's great to love our kids and to nurture them, but we've also got to be careful that we don't enable them, and that we show them that here's where they are and here's where they need to be or could be in a visionary sense, and give them the support to move forward by not being afraid to make mistakes and take risks and challenge themselves in greater ways.
So where'd accountability get squoze in there?
Accountability is a big part of that, and not to be afraid to say to a student, you made a mistake.
Yeah, thank you,
And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You made a mistake, and now this is where we go from here. Or you didn't complete your responsibility here with this assignment.
And what are the consequences to that?
Right.
That, I think, goes to Mr. Cohn's character development.
It's certainly a big part of it.
It has been wonderful having you on the show, Pat.
Well, thanks.
Thank you very much for
Mike.
joining us.
Thanks.
All right, we've been speaking with Dr. Pat Gemma, Superintendent of the Truckee Tahoe Unified School District, and we'll be right back with upcoming events. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. Here's upcoming events in and around our region for the week starting Wednesday, October 30th. The Village at Squaw is finishing up their 13 days of Halloween. Call 584-1000 for information on ghost stories and other activities in the village. The Truckee Ski Swap returns to Truckee Community Center, on November 2nd. That's on Church Street, and show up from 11 a.m. until 4. You want to get there early for the best selection of used and new ski equipment and clothing. The Rotary Cadillac Ball is back November 9th. The Cadillac Legacy Ball returns to the resort at Squaw Creek. The theme this year is Studio 54, and that means get your dancing shoes out. A limited number of tickets are still available, so contact a local Rotarian for more information. And the Women's Wellness Weekend also returns to the resort at Squaw Creek the weekend of November 15th through the 17th. You want to call Janet Brady's group of community wellness folks from Tahoe Forest Hospital at 582-3483 for information on women's health booths, seminars, guest speakers, and activities for that weekend. There's also 2 additional shows coming into town. You want to look at posters because I don't have any information for you on that, and that's the TAMA show going on for the next couple of weeks, as well as the high school play. So keep your eyes peeled around town for posters and flyers for those 2 events. And that's it for this week. We want to thank Pat Gemma again for being on today's show. And remember, you can call the TTC TV studios at 582-1194 if you have an event you'd like us to mention on the show. We'll see you next week on Truckee Talks.